or say 2. To accept this call, press or say 5. To refuse this call, hang up now. To block this call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking now.
I don't consent to recording on my call except Rudy. Just touching base to see if there's anything that I needed to know or anything I could share with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you calling. I haven't received a text from Manning at all yet, so I don't know if that's going to happen tomorrow. Sometimes it does. Usually it does, but it hasn't happened so far. So if I do get a chance to go on the show, I don't think we'll be able to arrange a phone call from prison, but I will do my best to mention your name and your website, and I'll mention the the letter that you specifically are calling out. At this point, Mike, it's just a difficult situation, man. But we're doing the best that we can. I did send a message. I think I told you this morning to handleonthelaw.com. Is there any other alternative news medias that you can think of that would benefit from a letter about you, or
just if Daniel Brigman in the Power Hour would talk about it. If he could talk about, anybody. If he talked about Mike from Tennessee, the listeners know me.
Yeah.
Back a year ago, in I guess it was August or September, Joy said that she wanted the people, if there was anybody that they wanted to hear from, it could be a regular guest, it could be a listener that calls in. If anybody you wanted to hear, send us emails, and whoever we get the most of, we'll try to get them on. Well, she called me up 2 days later and said, Mike, people want to hear from you. So obviously there's a lot of people that know my voice when I'm on the radio, and Mike from Tennessee is the call sign that they know. Other than that, I wanted to share something with you. I've been listening to this banter. I finally got a radio that they have here to give you to listen to the TV. Only problem is there's no TV in here that works, so all I can do is pick up terrestrial radio, but it's something to listen to a little bit here and there. And all I hear them doing is accusing Trump of obstruction of justice. And I haven't heard anybody else say this, so it might be original, but this is my take on it. He's not guilty of obstruction of justice. What he's guilty of is obstruction of corruption.
Obstruction of corruption. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he's obstructing corruption.
Yeah.
You think about it. When he got rid of the guy that was over the FBI, he's obstructing corruption. The dude was corrupted. And I don't consider that a crime. I consider that a virtue.
Yeah, interesting.
So,
yeah. No, that's very interesting. Yep.
Just to play on words, I hadn't had anybody else use that terminology and phraseology, but I thought it might catch on.
No, that's interesting. Obstruction of corruption. I believe the entire, they say a few bad apples spoils the whole bunch. I believe the entire Department of Justice, as well as the FBI, are completely corrupted. And, based upon your case, you and your wife, of course, she's going to be sentenced tomorrow. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. And then I could go down a long list of innocent political prisoners that the FBI has entrapped and targeted, ruined their lives, separated, fathers from their children. And it's just horrific, man. And a lot of my friends do support Trump. I'm not one of them, Mike, just to share with you. From my perspective, my wife and I were very big on the birther issue regarding Obama's birth certificate was a proven forgery. Sheriff Arpaio came out and proved that. And there was a clip that Trump did on September the 16th of 2016. It was a Friday. And he came out and he was standing in front of a bunch of veterans, and he said, Obama was born in America, let's move on. And when he said that, he basically slapped the face of all of the birthers, and he said, let's move on to a different issue. But I think that's a critical issue because I put it in the same category as Esau selling his birthright. And that man should have never been allowed to be president for the past 8 years. And when Trump said that, he basically covered up for him. But regardless, that's not an important issue, from the perspective of, our political idea about whether we support Trump or not. It's not important on the fact that you have been targeted by a corrupt FBI and entrapped, and it all boils down to how do we expect to fix this, right? I mean, you're an innocent man sitting in prison. You should not be in prison. Your wife is going to be sentenced tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. We pray that judge, her heart, you know, if God can change the heart of a king, he can certainly change the heart of a judge. So that's what we're praying for. But Mike, I've got like 12, 15 people that are in prison, some of them as long as 22 years, that are completely innocent. They have not done anything wrong. And this Department of Justice and FBI are not doing anything about it. And there's nobody speaking about this in alternative media, and it's very hard to get anybody's attention. And it can get a little bit frustrating and overwhelming at times, but the only thing that keeps me sane is I've got to keep trusting in the Lord that he is going to turn this thing around somehow, some way, and set the captives free, you know?
Yeah, and I think short of the monetary system collapsing, it's going to be hard, because I'm running into this here where these people, they've been brainwashed, number one. There's, like you said, and I agree with you, there's a lot of people that are just low IQs and just don't get it, but there's a lot of people that are apathetic. They don't want to get it.
Yeah.
They would rather bury their head in the sand and status quo, you know, full steam ahead, because theirs is being provided for. But it's like I tell these people, I say, if you've got something that one of their minions wants, they're going to take it from you, and if you get in their way, they're going to put you in a cage.
Right.
They're going to steal your life from you. You don't realize you're destroying human beings' lives. You're stealing people's lives. You're taking away their very essence of their life that God gave them by putting them in a box. You're killing that, and you don't have that right. God did not give you that right. And they say, well, if I didn't work here, somebody else would. I said, you know what? If everybody developed morality overnight, nobody would show up for work in this place.
Amen. Amen. No, it's true. It's true, Mike, and what you're saying is true. And you're one of those people who do not bow down to the cult of government, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? You don't bow down as our government being the highest authority. There is a higher authority, and it's God's law. But I'll say this: when someone like you stands up, you are an affront, right? You are an affront, an anathema to these people who think that government is the end-all, be-all in authority, and they are destroying lives. But there is a higher creator that will hold them accountable, and they will not get away with it. But in the meantime, it's terrible to see. Revelation 6:10 says, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not avenge the blood of them that dwell on the earth?" I mean, it's horrific from my perspective, to see you, go through this, to know what heartache you must be experiencing, knowing your wife is going to go to trial tomorrow, and there's nothing you can really do about it. We got to put our trust in the Lord. And then not only that, Mike, but I look at, Schaefer Cox, Charles Dyer, Jeffrey Winehouse, Russell Landers, Bryce Quellar, Ed and Elaine Brown, the Ed and Elaine Brown supporters. They've been in prison for over 10 years. And one of the guys that went to prison, the only reason he's in prison, the FBI offered him $3,000 to be a snitch on Ed and Elaine Brown. He said, ain't no freaking way I'm going to be a snitch on Ed and Elaine Brown. He's sitting in prison 10 years. He's got like 15 years to go. It's like you said, they are ruining lives. They don't quite understand the seriousness of the actions they're taking, but they will be held accountable. I truly believe they will be held accountable. It's just a matter of time. But anyway, I could go on and on, Mike, but it is heartbreaking to see this, and so few people recognize how corrupt our government really is, the FBI and the DOJ specifically, and the Bureau of Prison.
Yeah, they're totally corrupted, and my mom says hell isn't large enough. They're going to have to make more room for all these people. But
yes.
The fact is that they have no soul and no spirit about them. They have no conscience, and mine is not a fear of my Creator. Mine is total commitment and obedience to my Creator, to recognize and tell the world, no, I stand for my Creator.
Right.
And I'm not taking a knee to a corporation posing as government. I've done everything by the book. I play by the rules, and I'm being destroyed because somebody wants what I've got.
Yeah.
And they're destroying my life and my wife's life, and we haven't hurt anybody. But because I shine the light on how they're rigging the elections, I was taught we're supposed to have a right to freedom of speech, and that means to be able to run for office.
Amen.
And
Amen.
if I can't run for office and those people that voted for me's votes don't count, it's a rigged game, and we don't have a government of we the people. We've got a corporation posing as government. It's a rigged game, and people need to wake up and take it back. And I don't want a revolution. I don't want people to die. I just want people to be held accountable and people to stand on their own feet like we're supposed to as real Americans. And I think we can do it. But unfortunately, I'm suffering right along with all the other people that you've named that shouldn't be suffering because of a corrupted system. And where are the preachers in the pulpits? Their mouths are shut because they're 501c3 corporate entities. They are not churches obedient to God.
Yeah. No, you're right. There is very few preachers. There are a few. Pastor Stefan Broden in South Dallas speaks out for political prisoners. Pastor Manning does. There's a guy. One of these days, I need to give you the phone number for Pastor Wally Drake. Matter of fact, I could give you that right now if you're interested. I think your wife called him a few times, but it might be good for you to make a connection with the man. He is very well connected, and he understands the plight of political prisoners and how corrupt our FBI is. And he answers his phone all the time. So if you ever did want to call him, but I think the phone numbers have to be approved, right? Approved beforehand. And
yep.
Okay.
What's the number?
The number is. Let me look it up. I've got it right here. I thought it was 8132. Yeah, here we go. 714-865-8132. 714-865-8132. His name is Pastor Wally Drake. He ran for Vice President of the United States of America with Alan Keyes. He was Southern Baptist Convention Vice President, I believe. Maybe President, I'm not sure. Might have been President of that. And he's been a preacher in California for the homeless, had a homeless ministry for like 25, 30 years. Very well educated about everything that's going on, and he's been around the block a few times. And if you make a connection with him, it'll put his name in your mind. Because the whole goal, from my perspective, is to get airtime to your case. We got to get people aware. So hopefully, God will be able to use some of these people to affect change.
Well, in short, let me ask you, did all of these people that are in prison, did they go to trial and did they have a good representation, or did their lawyers sell them out?
Okay.
Or did they plead guilty?
Yeah, many of them, at least Schaefer Cox and Ed Brown, what happens is they were having their trial. The judge will make some motion like, oh, no, you cannot bring any constitutional arguments in the trial. And so Schaefer and Ed Brown, as an example, said, well, if I can't bring constitutional arguments in the trial, I'm not going to show up. So they didn't show up. One domino led to another domino where they ended up, taking a stand or going on the lam. Or, Ed Brown's case, he had an 8-month standoff in his house. And so it's not like you talk about good legal representation, and I wish I knew what that was, but I don't know of any good Christian lawyers in all of America. In Bryce Matthew Quellar's case, he represented himself. He had a YouTube channel. Bryce Matthew Quellar is 25 years old. He made a YouTube video, and he is in a maximum security prison for making a YouTube video saying he would protect himself during a civil war with his firearms against homos and Satanists in government. Now, that might be a little crude to some people, but it certainly doesn't rise to the level of being a domestic terrorist worthy of a maximum security prison.
Did he go to, what was he convicted over? What did they call it?
I think it was attempted threat of domestic terrorism. It's some kind of crazy joint terrorism task force charge. Interpol got involved and contacted the Las Vegas Police Department. Of course, they have unethical and illegal relationships with the media. They put out numerous articles all over Las Vegas saying they had just narrowly stopped a Christian terrorist from a mass murder. Of course, a few months later, they really did have a mass murder in Las Vegas, which was very ironic. But I think the charge was something like attempted to make a threat or something. It's absolutely insane, and he's spending time in a maximum security prison.
Remaining.
Anyway,
okay, there's a thing in the law that says there's no such thing as an attempt to attempt.
Yeah.
And that's what they try to charge people on. You're attempting to attempt. No, he just made a blanket statement. He'll defend himself, and regardless of the threat, you have a God-given right to defend it. Did he go to trial?
They threatened him with so much time, Mike, that he ended up taking a plea deal, which a lot of these people do, in order to not go to prison for like 20 years. Yeah.
So how much time to get?
I think he's got 2 years, so he could get out the end of next year.
Wow. He should have taken it to trial and it had been dismissed.
Well,
he didn't know that. He was buffaloed.
Yeah, but that assumes you believe he's going to get a fair day in trial. And Mike, I'm telling you, man, people do not get their fair day in trial, just like in your case.
That's where the whiteheads of the world got to step up and take on these cases and get. If Whitehead would take on these cases and beat them one by one, people would shell out the money to underwrite his operation.
Yeah, it cut him off, and I don't know if he's going to call us back. This is an interesting conversation. I feel like I'm being a little bit defeatist here, but you can't put this whole dang country's corruption on John Whitehead with the Rutherford Institute. I mean, he can only do so much, right? But I understand the point Mike is trying to make. You know, but when you say the term Christian lawyer, my response is there such a thing? Is there even such a thing in this country left? I just don't know.
For just a minute, Mom.
An inmate at Leavenworth Detention Center. Your account balance is $18.96. To hear the charges for this call, press or say 2. To accept this call, press or say 5. To refuse this call, this call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking now.
Sorry about that. Real quick, I just wanted to share some insight that I've gotten from talking to some of the guys while I've been locked up that have been down this road a lot. It seems like there's two classes of people. Those that have money, they hire a good attorney, they're out on bond or they're out on their own recognizance, and they either get it dismissed or they go to trial and they win because they've got a fighter who will point out. Now they've got to have a loose thread. They have to have at least one of the elements that they're accusing you of that's totally false, and they latch onto that, and that's what they show the jury, and they convince the jury. It's a technique of convincing the jury that, okay, if they're lying about this, the whole thing is a fraud. The whole thing is a scam.
Well, yeah.
That man's case.
No, and a reasonable person would draw that conclusion. But Mike, there was a case up in Alaska. His name was Senator Ted Stevens. He was the longest-running Republican senator in American history, and Yep, go ahead.
Didn't he die in a plane crash?
Yes, he died in a plane crash. But they convicted him. They actually convicted him in a federal courtroom for accepting bribery. There's a book been written about it called The Unlawful Prosecution of United States Senator Ted Stevens. And the prosecution was withholding exculpatory evidence. They were manipulating evidence. They were using fabricated evidence from pedophiles, from an actual pedophile. They got him on the witness stand, got him to lie about Senator Ted Stevens. They actually got a false conviction, and only because an FBI whistleblower came out and exposed all the corruption within the Department of Justice did he even manage to get off. And if it had not been for that whistleblower, he would have still been convicted today. The judge would have not overturned the conviction. The point I'm trying to make, Mike, is that Senator Ted Stevens had access to the best law firms in the entire freaking world, right? He had access to tons of lawyers and interns that were doing investigative work for him, and he still lost. The only reason they overturned the conviction was because an FBI whistleblower came out. In my opinion, I don't think a good lawyer makes any difference. I think the system is so corrupt that even good lawyers get run over.
Yeah, if the system wants to hammer you, it doesn't matter who you got, and that's the truth. But all things aside, I'm talking about guys that are low-level drug dealers and crooks.
Oh, gotcha.
People that are actually, these are guys that are committing crime. They're not political operatives at all. They could care less about what's really going on and exposing it. These are just everyday guys that are thugs. But one other scenario I found is those guys that don't have money, they basically sit here pre-trial and they bide their time. They get these court-appointed attorneys and they'll go through them like sifting, looking for the good one that'll fight, and then they'll fire all these people. Finally, they'll get a good one that's going to fight, and they'll expose to them, because they already know the routine. They'll say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get this charge beat. And then the DA doesn't want to go to trial. Well, the guy's been sent in jail for 2 years. Okay, instead of sentencing to 10 to 20 years, yeah, we'll take time served,
Yeah.
plea bargain it down, or like in one guy's case, he's sitting in federal jail for a year, and his charge was dismissed. But he had a guy named Leslie Ballin out of Memphis. I don't know if you remember the Mary Winkler case, but he was the co-counsel for the Mary Winkler case.
No, I'll have to look that up. Mary Winkler. Okay, yeah, I'll look that up.
Yeah, she was a woman who shot her husband was a preacher, and she shot him in the back and with a shotgun as he lay in the bed sleeping with the kids in the car, and she went to Florida. She was arrested, charged with first-degree murder, and the prosecutor was none other than the guy that prosecuted me, Mike Donovan.
Wow.
And he did a softball, nobody, Winfrey talked to her, she got convicted of a lesser offense. She served 3 months in jail. 3 months in jail, that's it.
Incredible. Incredible, yeah.
Nobody talked about it. I talked about it on my radio talk show. Nobody talked about it. She's the niece of the judge, and she's the niece of Steve Farese. Steve Farese, the lead attorney, the hotshot lawyer from Mississippi, he, like the, what's that guy from California that did the O.J. Simpson trial?
There's so many of them. There's Johnny Cochran.
He's the Johnny Cochran in Mississippi.
Gotcha.
Okay? He's smooth and knows what's going on. Anyway, they beat it, got a lesser included offense, but the thing is that she's free. Okay? Her husband is dead, and she only served 3 months, and I've been locked up now going on a year. The whole thing started because I ran for office, and then I sued to challenge an election. And then I was attacked. My wife and I were shot at. We've been reporting crimes. The only reason I ran for office is because my wife's shot at, I'm shot at, my dogs are being shot and killed, and nobody's being held accountable.
Yeah.
Where's the equal,
you say you ran for the election, and then you were winning, and then they flipped the vote totals, and then you were exposing the rigged election. Schaefer ran for the Alaska Senate, and he was winning like 32% of the vote in a three-way race. He narrowly missed winning the election. I don't know if he ever claimed it was rigged, but Jeffrey Winehouse in Missouri, his story is almost identical to yours, where he was running for sheriff. He was winning the election when by a landslide, and then he woke up the next morning and everything was turned around opposite, and they said that he lost, and he was exposing a rigged election just like you were. And a few months later, they tried to kill him, and they put 2 bullets in his head that bounced off his head. He's still alive today, but the problem that we've got is you've heard of this statistic, right? That 5%, America has 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's prison population. It's just so massive. It's like people are making a living off this prison industrial complex, and they've got to feed the system. And so it's very difficult if they want you in prison and you don't have the financial resources to fight it, to do so.
This is the beast. I'm in the belly of the beast. The beast is the government system. It's a corporation posing as government. It is the beast, and the fuel is us. Look, this phone call is fuel. There's so much money being lost daily in phone calls.
Right.
It's a huge business. People are profiting off of commissary, off of phones. You name it. Think of all the energy that's lost, where I could be out there doing engineering consulting, being the ambassador of the Silk Nation, getting their logging operation going, getting people back to work, doing all these good things that would be much more productive and actually create jobs. In this county where I'm at right now, there are 5 prisons. There are 3 federal prisons, 2 state prisons, and a county jail. Yeah. And that's all there is. That's it. This county is, and the people here, they don't smile. The only people that come in here that have an attitude are right across the Missouri River over there in Kansas City, because they've got stuff. They've got jobs. They've got a lot of things going on, and they have a life. Over here, you're either working for the prison or you're in the prison.
Yeah. Incredible.
And I talked to one guy, and I said, I bet you if you didn't work for the prison, the local cops would be looking for ways to try to arrest you to put you into prison. He laughed and said, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
No, I'm not kidding. They are basically harvesting people for this beast.
No, I'm with you. I totally agree with that. Can you receive paperback and hardback books, or only paperback?
No, if it comes from a publisher or the author or something like that.
Okay, you can receive hardback books. I think I've asked you before, but just as a reminder, you can receive hardback books if it comes from the publisher?
I haven't seen anything that says I can't get a hardback book. I mean,
we'll find out. I mean, we'll find out, but depending on how long this thing goes, Mike, I mean, it sounds like, do you have any idea what your release date is? Because almost every other prisoner that I communicate with has some idea when their release date is. Do you have any idea at all?
I've not been served. I've not been before a judge. I've not been arraigned. I've not been served with a charge. I think, Pat's got a copy of that indictment somehow that got to her. I think it got to her through the court or something. When I was at trial, they threw it out there on the table or something, but I've never been properly served with the charge. I've never been before court arraigned, and if I'm not mistaken, 180-day rule that if they don't arraign you within 180 days or 6 months of being indicted, they got to dismiss the charge.
Well, you've been in jail. You've been in prison since January of this year, right? That's well over 6 months.
January 12th, well, the indictment was April the 18th. And so you do the math, I'm into the 7th month right now. So I'm well past 180 days. And if I had somebody that knew the insides of this law, I don't have access to the book. I mean, I can read a book and I can regurgitate the rules. If I've got the rules of a game, you give me any game, sport, it don't matter. If I got the rules, I can compete.
Right.
If I don't have the rules, that's the thing, they hide the rules. You're not allowed to play in the sandbox.
Right. It's terrible, man. It's terrible. The thing is, you keep talking about, and rightfully so, good Christian lawyers. Where are they? And that's the question of the day. I don't know.
Jay Sekulow is on the radio every day, and his staff asking for people to donate because they're fighting the good fight. They're in Washington. They're going after this stuff. But the individuals in the arena, like us, are wasting away. And so, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, if the people that are on the front lines aren't being supported. Anytime you send out an army, you got to send out a supply line behind them. You got to provide them with beans and bullets, right? If you don't have beans and bullets, your army falls flat. Do you study the history of the Civil War? You know why the South lost?
Well, I think Lee surrendered, and Jefferson Davis told him not to surrender even until the last man. Probably has something to do with the that last battle that they had. But go ahead and tell us what you.
No. Inside baseball here. Inside baseball. All right. The French blockaded the ports down there at New Orleans. The Mississippi River was blockaded. That's why the emancipation was done, to satisfy the French. He wasn't going to do it. He didn't give a damn about the blacks. He did, but he didn't. It was all about commerce. Anyway, they blocked the ports. There was no coffee coming up. The Southerners were basically without rations. They didn't have coffee, and they were dead on their feet. They couldn't function because they were asleep.
There you go. They didn't have a supply line.
I've got friends that family members fought in the Civil War, and they talked about in their diaries and stuff about the fact that they didn't have food to eat, they didn't have coffee to drink, and when you don't have something to get you going, you're dead. You're right. You're just asleep, and then you're easily captured. You're just worn out, physically worn out, exhausted. And that was the problem in the South. They were physically exhausted. The supply lines are shut down, and that stopped the war.
You mentioned Jay Sekulow earlier. I've reached out to him numerous times. Not just, there was a Ken Hovind. I reached out, never responded back. The problem is, let's say that, I've got a list of what I consider innocent political prisoners. You and your wife are now on that list. But if nobody's paying attention, right, it's like, how do you get their attention in a country with 360 million people? And even if I got their attention, Mike, I mean, just imagine how the conversation would go. It's like, hello, Mr. Sekulow, I would like to get your attention and direct it towards an innocent man who's in prison. He ran for an election. He was winning the election. He was exposing corruption as far as a rigged election and other corruption, including pedophilia. And he needs your attention because he's in jail and he's been there, for a very long time. And now the FBI has entrapped his wife. And oh, by the way, there's Schaefer Cox, who's also been set up and entrapped by the government. And oh, by the way, there's Charles Dyer, who was set up and entrapped by a Jezebel wife. And I could go on and on. I mean, there's just, there's probably, I could go on for 20 different people. So
here's the thing where you get them, okay? When you get a power hour, you're recording this, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, great. Daniel Brigman. This is a format where you can get individual cases like ours. You can come to the rescue and say, okay, Patriot lawyers, Larry Pratt, Stuart Rhodes, Mr. Whitehead,
1 minute remaining.
There's your opportunity. There's your harvest field right there. And one thing you do is not only do you get them out of prison, you come back behind and you clean up the mess by suing the government, and you make money and they make money, and that's how we beat these old boy networks. We take their money. You can't just expect. We're broke. My wife's been out of work. I've been, locked up for a year. My wife's been off work for 2 months, and so, other than them fixing to steal our farm, but the resources are there. It's going after the government and taking it back from them. And there's cases where they're entitled. I'm entitled to get $5,000 minimum a day for being locked up.
Yeah, that's going to be quite a payout when they have to pay.
Well, there's where they get their money. Punitive damages against this government for malicious prosecution, and that's how we take them down. Let's rally the team. Let's call out the generals. Let's step forward and get in.
Well, you heard him at the end there. He said, let's rally the team. So that's what I would like to see happen, but it doesn't happen that way. It's heartbreaking to hear Mike talk like this because he thinks like everybody will just rally the team and we'll get everybody together. But, in reality, these people, and, he mentions Larry Pratt, he mentions Sekulow, he mentions John Whitehead with the Rutherford Institute, Daniel Brigman. They're not in tune to the issues of the disparity and the desperateness of Mike Parsons sitting in prison for a year, or Pat Parsons is going to be sentenced to prison tomorrow from anywhere from 5 to 20 years. Hopefully won't get prison any, but it could be up to 20 years. They're not really sensitive to the fact that Russell Landers has sat in prison 22 years and didn't do anything to deserve it. Or if they are, they aren't speaking out about it. Maybe, so I could go on and pontificate. Ultimately, just thinking out loud here, I'm going to continue to put Mike Parsons' message out on YouTube. I pray to God that those messages and these videos hit the ears of somebody who can make a difference. But I'm not going to go begging them. That you may say I'm not a good team player or whatever. But I'm tired of going and begging people with big microphones or people with lawyer degrees to do the right thing. I'm simply going to put the videos out there. Here's yet another patriot who's been targeted by a corrupt government. He's sitting in prison. Now they've targeted his wife. And that's what my role is. I can only do so much with what I've been given, but I'm not going to go like, he's calling back again. Let's answer the phone.
You have a prepaid call from...
It's me for just a minute, Mom.
An inmate at Leavenworth Detention Center. Your account balance is $15.01. To hear the charges for this call, press or say 2. To accept this call, press or say 5. To refuse this call, this call will be recorded and subject to monitoring at any time. Thank you for using IC Solutions. You may begin speaking now.
I don't consent to recording my calls. I'm not going to take up much time. Just real quick to say, if all these people had that letter I wrote I guess it was the update letter, where at the end I talk about the win-win scenario, and at the end I say that, we can look back and tell our posterity that there was once a time when, because I stood, this is something they can say to their posterity, when I stood because it was the right thing to do, took a stand and spoke out. Now we can all be real Americans again because we took back our country. We got rid of the old boy networks.
Yeah. No, amen, Mike. And, before you got cut off on the last call, you said rally the team. My wife and I have been involved in this political prisoner thing probably going on 3 or 4 years now. And here's the analogy that I would give. You've been thrown in a pit, right? You're thrown in a pit, and you are in the belly of the beast. And there's probably a few people that are communicating with you. I'm just one of probably, I'm sure you got 4 or 5 others, friends that communicate with you, send you letters, receive your phone calls. And I'm at the edge of the pit, right? I'm at the top of the well. If Jeremiah was thrown in a well, I'm at the top of the well, and I'm hearing you, and I'm trying to take your voice and amplify it. And I want to rally the team, exactly like what you said. But when I look around at the team, man, they're off doing their own thing, and no matter how hard I yell, it's very hard for me not to get very angry, right? That says, it's not just you in the well, but now they're going to possibly throw your wife in the well. The Schaefer's been in the well 7 years. We got Russell Lander's been there 21 years. Ed and Lane Brown's been in there 10 years each, and it's like nobody freaking cares. And it's like ultimately, I got to calm down and we're going to trust in the Lord. But it's very hard for me not to get angry with my patriot brothers and sisters and followers in Christ that they don't seem to be paying attention to what's going on.
You have to challenge them and say, are you really a patriot, or are you just a patriot for the moment because it's fashionable? Because here's the thing, you're either a free man or you're a slave. Now, if you want to be a slave, that's okay. Thomas Jefferson said, something to the effect about, we care not for your arms or your counsel, so go in peace, and may the chains of slavery sit lightly upon your shoulders, and may posterity forget that you were ever a countryman. Because the fact is that if you're not supporting and standing against the tyranny, if you're not standing and speaking out against it, you're supporting it. Your silence is supporting it. And here's the thing: today it's me, and tomorrow it's my wife.
Yeah.
And then the next day it's somebody else.
Right.
And then it's their wife. Sooner or later, as they did in Germany, they're going to get around to you.
Yeah.
In Tipton County, Tennessee, last year there was a comment in the paper about, now they're starting to arrest relatives of the county commission. That's right. They run out of people to arrest, and so they're starting to arrest their own people.
Yeah. Well,
they're feeding on their own.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Let me offer you these 2 ideas to consider. One of them is when I approach somebody and tell them we've got an innocent political prisoner that needs attention, and the first hurdle that I run into is he must have done something wrong, or the government wouldn't have put him in prison.
Then you ask him this question: do you believe in Christ? Do you believe there are followers of Christ? Do you believe that people can be Christ-like? Okay. If you don't believe in, here's the thing: I've been a follower of Christ literally my whole life, and people are sold a bill. I don't know what it is about the churches. They want to sell you this song and dance that everybody is sinners. They're born sinful, and I don't believe you're born sinful because God didn't make us corrupted. And I know the thing about Adam and Eve, but that was their choice. Okay.
Yeah.
We all get a choice in the matter. Christ came, and all that stuff goes away. And Christ even said, this is not for the righteous. The righteous are doing things right. This is for those people that need help. He's in there ministering to the sick, not to the people that are already righteous.
Yeah.
And if we're already doing the right things, why should we need somebody to say, well, you must have done something wrong? First of all, the government is not God in standing in judgment. And I am ashamed of my fellow Christians who have been sold that bill of goods, that Romans 13 nonsense, that somehow they put God and government on equal par. You can't have 2 masters. You'll have one, but that's it. You can't have both. So, and there's one guy I talked to, and he admitted it. He said, I view government as a god. It's a little g God, but it's God. I said, but if you make it a god, what did God say? Have no other gods before me? He don't want nothing before him, after him, beside him, nowhere near him. If you got something else that you're making a god, you're taking away from him.
No, I'm with you, Mike. Yep. No, they do lift up government as their God, and they refuse to recognize the sovereignty of our God, who is above our government. But let me put this idea forward to you as well. The first hurdle is they must have done something wrong. So I show them all the evidence. I say, please read this letter. Please look at this document. Please go to this website and spend an hour reading this. And let's say they do it. Let's say I finally convince them that there was an atrocity of justice in this particular man's case because they spent the time. It takes a rare individual who's going to spend that time. And they finally come to the conclusion, well, there was an atrocity of justice. This man should not be in jail. He was targeted by a corrupt government. The second thing I run into is once they've made that decision that there is an innocent man in prison that's worthy of our time, there's too much to lose if I speak out. I'm going to lose my comfortable house. I'm going to lose my comfortable job. They're going to target me if I speak out. And so it's like, it's sickening.
That's what you call a well-kept, Rudy, that's what you call a well-kept slave.
Yeah.
That's what you're dealing with right there. The slaves that are happy being slaves because they're well-kept.
No, and my wife and I, how long have we been doing this? 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, 4 years. That's the majority of people that you're dealing with.
I'm telling you, man, we have been in this for several years, and the majority of people fall into one of those two categories. They don't care, and if we do get them to care and do get them to look at it,
right.
and then they say, well, there's too much to lose, man. I got a job.
Here's
I can't.
What you do.
Yep.
Rudy, you look them in the eye and you say, Peter, step out of the boat.
There you go. There you go. I tell you, Mike.
You'll either step out or you won't. And here's the thing. Right now, as I see this, as according to the Bible, Satan is sifting to see, who he's able to get, and everybody has their their temptation. Satan is tempting everybody. Are you going to go along with Satan and his crowd? And most people will go along with Satan's crowd and the minions because they're stuff. They get the stuff and they're comfortable as long as they're relatively left alone. They'll pay the tithe and the tax and all this other stuff. But if they want to stand on the side of God and take care of themselves and be left out of that corporate system, that requires a leap of faith. And there's not too many people that have that kind of faith.
No, there's not too many. You're right about that. You're right about that. It's so we get into the situation of if even people bother to spend the time, and let's say they spend the time, and then they got too much to lose, and then it's just there's just not many people like that, and so we'll keep trying. But like you said, the people that do have big microphones and do have access, well, they're not interested now, but I hope that we can make them interested.
I think Daniel Brickman is. He's already got
and that's
a
why
rallying point.
That's why his show got bumped.
Aaron is a big listener to the Power Hour too, so y'all both have that in common. I don't listen that often.
Yeah, I figured he got bumped because he's talking so much about exposing how the Bundys are being railroaded and talking about solutions, and they don't want the people out there to hear that.
He's talking sovereign ideas too, I think.
Well, let me. Okay.
Yes, he is. Yes, he gets it now. He's starting to get it.
Yeah. So the third thing, we talked about two things. I need to write this down so it doesn't slip my mind, but the attention span of getting to investigate the case. The second one would be I got too much to lose. And the third one is, Mike, and you'll be shocked at this maybe, but they'll say, well, Mike doesn't believe in pre-trib, and I'm a pre-tribber, and therefore I don't know how I can support him because my doctrine is just a bit different.
Right a minute. Then you take them to Christ. Are you a follower of Christ? If they say yes, we'll say, okay, what did Christ say in the book of Luke when the disciples said, there was another casting out demons in your name, but he wasn't with us, and we chastised him, meaning we beat the heck out of him. And Christ said, if he's not against us, he's with us. Leave him alone. Yeah,
right. But amen, amen. You're quoting the Bible, and praise God, brother, because that's exactly where I derive my truth from too. But I'm saying the nature of human beings, if they don't identify with you and exactly your doctrinal beliefs, then they don't want to step out and put their name at risk. Yeah.
Listen. Brothers want to fight amongst brothers rather than go after the bad guy because it's a lot easier.
Oh, it's sickening the infighting we see in the Christian community. And when you said you were ashamed of your Christian brothers earlier, it's like not only am I ashamed at them, but I'm very angry at them that we don't identify who the real enemy is.
Right, they're not following Christ.
It's easier to fight your own brothers than it is to expose evil in the government. They're afraid of the government. The government's the God, and you're not
That's right.
You're not going to change that. We're not going to change that. Until Jesus comes back, there's no hope for that.
Well, we can try. The thing is, we're not defeatist. I'm going to try until my dying breath, Mike, but I got to say, Aaron and I, if you sense a little frustration, it is because we're a little frustrated. And it's not because we know there's not a cause. There is a cause. You're an innocent man sitting in prison. What's going to happen to your wife tomorrow? I pray to God they let her go, but if they don't, there is definitely a cause, but it is a little frustrating to see our brothers and sisters in Christ ignore it.
You know, it's not only that I love my Creator and a follower of Christ, I love my family immensely, and the generations to come are going to have to deal with what I don't take care of, the mess that we've got. If we don't take care of it, our ancestors are going to have to deal with it.
Yeah, but our kids don't care.
Well, they may not care, but they should care. We should have trained them to care.
We tried.
Yeah.
We did our best to teach them, and they don't care.
They don't understand what's really going on. They don't understand that their futures and their posterity's futures are at stake.
No, they think you're nuts, and they think we're nuts.
Yeah.
You know, if you try to tell them how important this is,
they don't care.
We're all a bunch of nutcases, man. You guys are crazy. Just where's the newest iPhone? You know, and how can I play my video game?
Right. There's a website called antisociety.com. There's a tab on it called Lawfully Yours, and it explains how the government is a corporation. It's not a government of we the people. And
what was the name of that website again, Mike? Can you say that one more time? The name of the website, I missed it.
And it's on my website homepage, but it's anticorruptionsociety.com.
Okay.
And there's a tab called Lawfully Yours.
Okay. You know, all of this stuff that about America being a corporation, I've heard many people talk about all that, but I've never seen a really good book on it. So
that's what Daniel's starting to talk about, and that's what he's getting run over by, is because they don't want him to acknowledge it's a corporation, because once you stop engaging in commerce, they lose authority.
And John B. Wells got kicked off coast to coast and had to do his own Caravan to Midnight because he was talking about the commies.
Yeah, he had Dr. Richard Allen Miller on his last show he ever did. I was listening to it. I know Richard Allen Miller's a friend. A good friend of mine has the USAPrepares.com radio show. He's on GCN also. Vincent Finelli, I've been to his house many times. When I got arrested, I can't call him. He won't respond. Won't take calls from my wife. Nothing. We're just, and he's got a connection to the Vatican. He's got a link. I kid you not, a direct link.
Well, I mean,
he's got a friend, one of the enforcers of the Vatican, and they said, I've stepped on too many toes.
Well, but you referred to him as a good friend, and I would say, well, how good a friend is he if when you get thrown in prison and your wife is about to be thrown in prison, he don't receive your phone calls? I mean, my goodness, if I had friends like that, I wouldn't need any enemies.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got it.
It's terrible. Terrible. But, yeah, Mike, don't forget as we go forward how important your letters are, because even though it may not be getting traction right now, the kind of traction we would like, they will be reserved and they will be, put up on our website, and so we'll have a collection, right? And if people come and look at your writings and look at the notes that are already on your website, it'll be there, right, for anybody that wants to seek the truth.
Yeah, we document history and where people stand right now. And that's the best I can do. I pray and I document where people stand and how they haven't helped at all.
Yeah, because go ahead. I'm sorry.
Keep this in mind. I'm a really, at the end of the day, I'm a basic man. I have to have a reason to live. And if they take my wife and they kill her in prison, then I have no reason to live.
It's a tough situation, Mike. My heart breaks, man. My heart breaks regarding that situation. But, as long as your wife is breathing, you've got a reason to live. And, Paul said it would be better for me to go on to the next level, but I'm going to hang around for the rest of you guys. And you are a warrior, and this world needs warriors. That's the only thing I would remind you of, brother.
Well, I fight for my family. My whole fight is about protecting my family. And I viewed myself doing it by the book this whole time and trying to do what I thought was the right thing in a constitutional republic, but I find out, oops, it's a corporation, and I don't get to play because I'm not part of that corporate system.
Yeah.
I didn't get that rule book, so therein lies the problem.
Right.
The whole system's a fraud. Read anticorruptionsociety.com. you'll get.
Yeah, we know, Mike. You're preaching to the choir.